good morning, church. And it's Father's Day, so I've got a little bit of extra time because there's no leaders meeting. And so I want to, they say the role of a preacher is to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. So how much disturbing do you want? How much comforting do you want? Well, Finn at the back goes, give it to me all. All right. So I've got an exercise for you, and if you are obedient, it will change your life. If you know me, you have my telephone number. So get out your phone and text me something. Okay. All right? Okay, get your text out. All right? So I've turned mine off so it doesn't go beep, 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 beep. I'll get these when I get home. So, dear Joe. Just, dear Joe, that's Joe. Okay. Okay. Okay, all right. Dear Joe, I want my salary, including interns, and my wife is allowed to put my allowance. I want my new salary to be. Okay? And then fill in the gap. And now before you send it, is that what you really want? Really, really, really want? Or is that just a little want? What is it that you really want? Yes. What you tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Okay. All right. Have you done it? Send it. Send it. Now, my job is to preach to you so you can get it. Let's see if I can do my bit. All right, so you've all texted me, right? No cowards in the group. All right? No shunners in the group. No worried about what I will think about you in the group interns. All right, let's get into some preaching. All right, so we have typed out the lesson, and it has been sent to you. If you are here for the first time, nudge the person, and they will give it to you. And the title of today's salary... Sorry, there you go. Just checking. The title of today's sermon is David, Dream Big. David, dream big. Do you have dreams for your life as big as God does? That is the real question. Do you have dreams for your life as big as God does? Jeremiah 29:11. When this was written, it was to the Israelites, and they were in captivity. So they were like, God, I don't feel loved. I'm not even in my home. I've been dragged through the desert. Do you love me? Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. So if you had unlimited power, knowledge, and insight to give to your children as a father, what dreams would you have for them? Would you send them to the local school or to Harvard? And yet, I think many of us put ourselves in the local school. Often the problem with children is that they do not want help from their dad. They go, I want to stand on my own 2 feet and prove to my dad that I don't need his help. So I can say I did it for myself. How proud and how sad. They don't consider how their father feels, more how they feel. And they waste the power that is available to them. The issue with so many is that they dream too small. Think about it. Who has bigger dreams for a young boy? The father or the boy? so often the father. It's because the boy is racked with insecurity, self-worth issues, fear of failure, listening to others with the same crippling issues. The only way to dream big, really big, is to listen to God and tap into his vision for your life. Jesus' dream on earth was to change the world. Why should yours be any smaller if you are to follow him? What are you so scared of? Do you believe that Jesus wants to change your world? If you attach yourself to him and jump, he will make it happen. But you must attach yourself to him, not your own insecurities. Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus through all generations, forever and ever, amen." So when this was written to all generations. So who has more imagination for your life? God or you? It's definitely not you. You were just praying to make it to church on time this morning. That's what you were praying for. You know, I've used this analogy before, but I'll use it. When I went parachute jumping, tandem parachute jumping, people said, "You are crazy. That's wrong. I would never do that. I think that's irresponsible as a minister. You could hurt yourself. What about your wife? What about your children?" Etc., etc., etc. But when I get there, they attach you to somebody else who does the work. Now, because I'm a big guy, there's an average weight, so they don't put you with a bigger guy, they put you with a smaller guy. All right? So I'm attached to this teeny-weeny guy, all right? And I don't know how to parachute. That's the point. He does. And we're driving down there, and people are like, "Oh, are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared?" Now imagine if we came to the parachuting place, and all the people that we were attaching ourselves to went, "I hope it works today." Or I actually asked the guy, "How many times have you jumped out of an airplane?" If he'd said, "This is my first time," all right, I'd be worried. I said, "How many times have you done this?" He said, "About 2,000. I said, "How many times will you do this today?" 5. "Are you worried?" "No." So I put my confidence in him. Now, I looked up a fact because I wanted to take it a little bit further. How often do parachutes fail? That's the real issue, right? This is what it says. Even seemingly properly packed parachutes can fail. Not good at this point, okay. With 1 in every 1,000 parachutes not always operating 100% efficient. Doesn't sound good right now. However, with these stats in mind, skydiving professionals know better than never to trust one chute with their life. That is why tandem skydivers typically descend with 3 parachutes. So the chances of having all 3 parachutes fail at the same time is 1,000 million to 1. 1,000 million to 1. Then I looked up, what are the chances of dying crossing the road? It's 300 million to 1. So you are more likely to be killed crossing the road to your car after church than you are jumping out of an aeroplane attached to a professional. Is that going to stop you leaving church today? No. See, so people are happy to cross the road every day and not skydive because they don't know the truth, they don't see the truth, and they don't feel the truth. That's why people don't attach themselves to Jesus. Because they don't know Jesus, because they don't see Jesus, and they definitely don't feel Jesus. Now, am I talking about me or am I talking about you? See, the first thing you need to do to achieve a dream is actually to have one. Is to have a big one. And I hope you put down exactly what your salary you want it to be. Now, if you're visiting church right now, we're going through career workshops and everything and helping people. So here's the thing. If I don't know what you want, how can I help you get what you want? And as a minister, I need to know the people's needs. All right? So if you don't actually say it, then what can I do to help you? It's the same with God. He may be all-knowing, but if you don't communicate clearly to him what you want, he'll go, I really don't know what you want. See, if you aim at nothing, you get nothing. And if you aim at something small, you get something small. All right, so if you go up to a food buffet and you take a little plate this big, all right, no matter how much you stack it, even if you're an engineer, you'll only get so much. But if somebody who's not an engineer, not a professional, takes a tray, they'll end up getting more than you. Yeah. It's about what you expect. Right. Come on. See, you've got to get out of the boat if you're going to walk on the water. Right. See, last week's challenge, I challenged everybody to go and get a review from their boss and ask for a pay rise. And most of you gave me a bunch of excuses that you thought were valid. I texted everybody, how'd it go? First of all, hardly anybody texted me back. So we went through Matthew 7, which says, ask, seek, and knock until you get it. Well, most of you didn't knock. Most of you didn't even ask. So what's the point of preaching every week and me not expecting repentance? So I'm not actually going to move from this point until there is repentance. And you get me ticked off with that, but not as much as I'll get ticked off with you for not repenting. And who am I doing this for? I'm actually doing it for you. Yeah. You see, you've actually missed the point of the challenge. The challenge wasn't the goal of money. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. The challenge was to stretch your mind and your heart and your faith. And to teach you not to settle for what you think you can do, but what God thinks you can do. And you go, well, I got a pay rise last week. And? Where does it say you can't get a pay rise 2 weeks in a row? Who added that? Well, they just gave me a promotion a month ago. And? Do you think you'd be the first person to get 2 promotions in 2 months? Well, they said they do all their reviews at the end of January. So have you not heard of the exception to the rule? So you've got to have much more tenacity. My daughter just passed her degree. And I love my daughter. She picked some great things up for my wife. And when my daughter got an average of 92 over a whole degree. Wow. And when she got 98 for her last project, she phoned them up and says, you're wrong. I should have got 100%. And she went at it. And you know what they did? They gave her 100%. Because she said, she doesn't settle for mediocrity. Now, if she's a non-Christian, going to non-Christian tutors, how about you who believe in the love of God? You know, AJ did get back to me and said, you know what? I asked for sponsorship to stay in the country in my review this week. So well done, AJ. You obeyed and you went. Come on, AJ. But this means they would have to increase my salary up to $75,000. So they had to go up the chain, and I'm waiting this week to find out. She knew what she wanted. It wasn't the salary, it was the sponsorship. Allison texted me back and said, hi, Joe, thanks for asking. Actually, I had a performance review and asked for a salary just before the lesson. So she already got it without me preaching to it. At that time, it didn't go very well. And remember, I talked about one of my reviews not going well. But inspired by your lesson, I chose to repent and bring to God to my workplace and by praying consistently. As a result, my relationship with my boss is getting so much better. And last week, God has blessed me with a placement, she's in recruitment, that has achieved my whole quarter's target It's truly a miracle. I'm so grateful. Now, that could have been you. But you didn't want the review in case your boss said you're no good. Alison went, ow, now I'm going to repent. And we talked about how our repentance at works impresses our bosses. How are you going to convert your boss? It's been by being humble and repenting. You know, most people, regardless of whether they're a Christian or not, have heard of the story of David and Goliath. And if you haven't, you've at least watched a movie that has, the small guy beating the big guy, or you've watched sport. God had a dream for David well before he became a king. But to achieve his dream, he had to face his challenge in front of all of his peers in the form of killing a giant. In other words, he was put on the world stage in front of the very best of Israel and went, in order for them to follow you, you need to do something great publicly so that they can put their faith in you. That's how we convert people. We do something publicly with the power of God that amazes people so they put their faith in God. But we're going to take a look and try and, see a little bit of a different angle to this story, because I think the way that it's told by most people is not necessarily accurate. So we're going to get into it. So we've got 3 points. Point 1, face your giant. So, what's your giant this week? Well, let's call it that salary. It may not be everybody's, but let's just call it that salary. Okay? 1 Samuel 17, verse 3. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with a valley between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scaled armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was hung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. So both armies here, the army of God and the army of the Philistines, were stuck. Neither advanced because they were unwilling to give up and go into what they call no man's zone. Each army was on the top of a hill, and the moment they ventured into that no man's land, they would be giving up their advantage. So in some ways, it was more comfortable to not be in the fight and just look like, hey, I should be in the fight, but I'm not going to be. And you could have said all sorts of things like, well, I'm not going to be an idiot. You go first, and come up with all sorts of excuses. Well, then here comes Goliath. All right, so he goes down into the valley. Now, it was not uncommon those days to decide a victory by 2 men going out and fighting single combat. That was quite common. When Israel saw the giant of a man, what did they see? Well, I think like most of us, when we see a challenge, we presume we actually know the challenge. So because most of us don't have faith, they thought they knew a lot about the giant. They're going, hey, that's that guy from Gath. Gath is renowned for good warriors. And I'm going to make the assumption that he's a good warrior because that's where he's from. It says he was 6 cubits and a span height. So he was 9 feet, 6 inches. So they're going, well, because he's so tall, he must be a great warrior. Because if I was that tall, I would think that I was a great warrior. To put this in perspective, and there's actually a picture in the notes here. All right, there's a picture of Robert Wadlow, who was the tallest recorded man in modern history, who was 8 feet, 9 inches. And here he's next to Shaquille O'Neal. And Shaquille O'Neal looks like a midget. Okay. So that sort of gives you the indication, if I was to go up against Shaquille O'Neal with a sword in his hand, I'd be pretty terrified. Then you see this guy, and Goliath was even taller. On top of this, Goliath was wearing heavy bronze armor that weighed 58 kilograms or 125 pounds. So Goliath was not only tall and intimidating in appearance, he also seemed strong because they assumed that underneath this armor must have been pure muscle. Goliath was prepared with his weapon of choice as well. On his back was a bronze javelin, and he had a spear In his hand was a spear shaft. So the way he would have attacked, and there's a picture later on, is he'd had a spear and he's going to come at you with the spear. So the Israelites would have presumed that Goliath would have been a great at throwing, and then he had maybe a distant advantage or, could do a bit like that. But when you see something, if you're insecure, lots of things go through your heart and mind. And you go, well, just because he's holding a spear, he must know how to use it. All right? And just because he's tall must mean he could run fast. And that's the thing, when you're faithless, you already do yourself out of what could possibly happen. But not everything is all that it seems. 9 feet 6 inches. Doesn't that sound ridiculously tall? That's another one of those things in the Bible, all right, that just sounds, it's not true. And yet some theorize that Goliath would have been suffering from a disorder called acromegaly, which is basically somewhere that could have run in his family because others of his brothers had actually were quite big. It's a disorder in adults where the pituitary glands produces too much growth hormone. So people, if you might have known, like Andre the Giant had this, and eventually it kills you, all right, because you just keep growing and growing. But with that comes bad eyesight, fatigue muscles, weakened joints, pain, and limited joint mobility. So actually, you're starting to think, is Goliath that awesome? But even if he didn't have it, he would most probably not have been equal in form and legs. So you see Shaquille O'Neal, and he's quite well formed. So, his arms aren't thin. He's quite well formed from his legs up to his body. But if you look at the other guy in the picture, the taller you get, actually your body gets weird because your skeleton is not actually meant to hold that. So you have thinner arms. So why did they have all this armor on him? Well, if he just put it on there and like this, it would have looked like he was amazing. The chances are underneath, this was a guy that could hardly move. Hardly move at all. But that wasn't what was projected. So in reality, instead of fighting a superhuman giant, fighting Goliath was like fighting a cow dressed up as a bull. His visual appearance was actually masking his great weakness. He was all bark and no bite. That is what it's like with all the giants in our life. The closer you look at them, investigate them, the less scary they seem. The fear is in your mind. Just like jumping out of an aeroplane, it's all in your mind. It's all you don't do anything. You're strapped to somebody, he jumps out, he lands you, that's it. All you have to do is not pull the plug and fall off. All right? Which they don't even tell you where it is. See, our enemy, Satan, like David's enemy, wants us to believe that the giants in our lives are unconquerable. He shouts lies into our hearts so that we will believe we cannot conquer our giants. Satan defies us to have courage to face our giants. He wants to intimidate us. In 1 Samuel 17, verse 8, it says, Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come up and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and service." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the armies of the living of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' word, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. First of all, they accept his rules of engagement. That's one of the most stupid things. He goes, this is how the battle's going to go. I'm your enemy, and I'm going to tell you how you got to beat me. So why the heck do you have to go with his rules? Go, send me one man. Well, if that's not your strength, why do you have to send one man? Why didn't Saul just go, let's get 100 and kill him quick before he shouts anymore? You see, that's what happens in our life. We feel like we have to play by the world's rules. Who said that? Who said you can't get a pay rise 2 weeks in a row? Well, in the world, that's what, who cares what they say? Who made up those rules? Somebody who broke the rules from before. Every rule was a rule broken before that now is a new rule. So it used to be you can't travel more than 30 kilometers an hour in Australia. Then it was 40, then it was 50. Why do you play by the world's rules? Why do you listen to your boss about what you can do? Why do you listen to your parents? instead of God. See, God allows this to happen to show who his people are faithful and deserve to lead his people. In 1 Samuel 17:16 it says, for 40 days the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. You can imagine the campfires. People maybe getting a little bit drunk, go, tomorrow I'm going to flat stand up. No, I'm going to stand up, man. No, I'm going to stand up. Bro, Jesse, man, no, bro, I'm going to do it before you. And the next day, like, maybe that's you go, tomorrow, man, I'm going to write it out on a do list. I'm going to do this. You wake up in the morning and go, oh, I forgot my do list. Because you're faithless. Our focus in church right now is to help people with their careers and salary. Yet these principles apply to any dream you have. It's just what we're focusing on right now. You see, the goal is not just to kill one giant in your life, but to become a skilled giant killer. To know how to face each challenge in life and overcome it, be it in your career, in your health, in your education, in your love life. It really doesn't matter what it is. If you understand how to kill giants, then you're a giant killer. And that's what we all need to become. Amen? Yeah. Point 2, fight your giant. Fight your giant. Carry on in 1 Samuel 17. It says, early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of a shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed him. He reached the camp as the army was going out to the battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with a keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted its usual defiance, and David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Now the Israelites have been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. You know, worldly dreams don't give you spiritual courage. Right. David asked the man standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? I mean, this is one of those passages in the Bible you wish you said. Do you know what I mean? Let me just read it again. What will be done to the man who kills the Philistine and removes disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Who is your boss to tell you what career or salary you should have? Who is he? He's not God. He's not even a Christian. Let me tell you a secret about why people give pay rises. When I was in top business and we were making lots of money in the mining boom, at Christmas we'd be making so much money we felt guilty that we weren't passing it down. And we would sit there and go, who should we give a pay rise to? And we go, that Gina in Adelaide, when we visit a branch, man, she makes a mean cup of coffee. I like it when I go down. She always buys me the right sandwich. Give her 10 grand. Literally, that's what we would do. Wow. And you go, well, it's about my performance. Not from the top looking down, it ain't. I think about some of the jobs people have got at Sydney Uni. We had a bunch of Christians that were paid $37 an hour for putting library books back. And the only reason they were is because they actually work for Sydney Uni. And they pay over the odds. See, what you think and how the world works is not how the world works. It's just how your world works. It says they repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. You know, David wasn't interested in what he could get. Right. Yeah. He was interested in being godly. Yeah. So when a giant comes into your life, it's time to fight and go to war against him. How did the Israelites combat their giant? Well, basically, they didn't. They didn't. They let the giant confront them and did nothing for 40 days. Every time Goliath would come and try and defy Israel, they would flee in fear. And every day they let him, they became more cowardly. Every day you don't ask for a pay rise, you become more cowardly. Yeah. Every day you don't go on a date, you go, well, I still now don't believe in my love life changing. Every day you don't work hard at your university, you go, I'll most probably fail. And you know it's right. It's true. because you're a self-fulfilling individual. Goliath referred to them as servants of Saul, and they believed it. In their fear, they forgot that they were serving God. He went, your leader, he's a coward. He should come and fight me. And he's not. And so you're a servant of him. You're just like your leader. And that's why as leaders, we need to be out the front, financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Our people are a direct reflection of who we are and what we call them to. The Israelites were all talk and no action. It says now the Israelites have been saying, in other words, they were all talking the same rubbish. They got in the habit of talking about the rewards instead of engaging in the battle that would bring the rewards. That's like, God, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if I got a pay rise? Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great? Rather than actually going and getting one. They look forward to the rewards of victory, wealth, marriage, and no taxes, basically what everybody wants. All right? But they weren't willing to do what it took. Many of us can be like that. Talk about our dreams when asked, but when it comes to actually what are we doing about it, we retreat from the sacrifice or the challenge. Right. Their desire to be rewarded was greater than their courage needed to gain the reward. They wanted success without fighting for it. That's the world mantra. Is it's an entitled attitude. I want everything without the pain of sacrifice. Enter David, the giant killer. Let's carry on in 1 Samuel 17:32. So David said to Saul, he went right up to the king, man. It's nobody went, I'm going to deal with the real issue. You know the real issue? The king. Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. I wish I was there for that day. You know what I'm saying? Saul replied, you're not able to go out against the Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man. He has been a warrior from his youth. How did he even know that he'd been a warrior from his youth? We can start making up stories about our giants that we don't even know. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. Great qualification. When a lion and a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistines. Saul said to David, go and the Lord be with you. He didn't say, I'll come with you. Did he? Or I'll help you. Say, good on you, mate. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on the sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. He took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of the shepherd's bag with his sling in his hand, and approached the Philistine. In other words, he's like, man, I can't do it your way. Now, when I preach and I give my examples, you can't do it my way. Yeah. Maybe sometimes you can, but you've got to find a way. You have to find a way. How do I ask for a pay rise? Google it. YouTube it. Podcast it. There must be 1,000 ways, right? We'll figure out which way works for you. See, here the boy teaches the king Saul how to be a man. Saul goes, you're a boy. David wasn't contemptuary. He went, we'll see about that. Saul viewed the worldly Goliath as an undefeatable warrior by all, including himself. Saul saw David as just a small boy who God could not use. But Saul had forgotten. When he was a young man and a nobody, God made him a somebody. We can forget how God has changed us. David, on the other hand, brought God into the picture straight away. He focused not on Goliath, his size, his overwhelming armor or his weapons, but on the size of his God. Let me tell you what God has enabled me to do. David had been building his faith in God's power to use him through all of his life as a shepherd. It didn't mean that David had no fear. It meant that David had learned to conquer his fears. Now, I looked up how big the bear could be. And one of these bears in that region could have been 9 feet. Now, the lions were more smaller. We think, African lions, they were smaller. So maybe he started overcoming the lions, moved to one bear, because God went, you know what? I'm going to get you to have a victory in a similar situation with a similar size, so you're not intimidated by size. See, he'd mastered overcoming his fears. Before David had learned to kill lion and bears, he would track them down as they carried off his lambs. And I got this cool insight. So notice, imagine David telling his son Solomon how he did it. Okay, so what happens is the lion gets a lamb. So the lion then is like this on 4 paws, and he has a lamb in his mouth. What is the most dangerous part of a lion? It's its mouth. Now, is it running towards you to attack you, or is it running away? It's running away. So imagine him going, look, I followed the lion. I saw it had, the lamb in its mouth. It's running away from me. So its whole focus is it's not very self-aware. It's just trying to run away. And I'm chasing it, and I'm chasing it. And then what I would do is I would give it a killer blow as it was running away. And then when I did that, I could move in, grab its mane, and just kill it. So there was a methodology to how he killed the lion. There was a way of doing it. All right, as we'll find out later on, he would have used a sling. And we'll look about the power of a sling and a slingshot in a minute. So you go, was this possible? It was absolutely possible. Now, if a lion is coming straight at you and you don't know what you're doing, that's a completely different thing. But shepherds would have hours and hours and hours of doing nothing. So they would practice their slingshot again and again and again and again. So the concept of if I get lucky, I might hit the lion in a certain place that might damage them. Actually, taking a shot from a distance, well, anybody can do that. We'll find out about his skill in a minute. So you have a victory over a lion. Okay, your confidence is up. Then one day, a bear comes. You go, well, it's a different challenge. But it's the same principle. I wait until the bear has its mouth full. I wait until the bear is not looking out for me behind. It's focusing on running. So now I have the advantage. It's a surprise attack on a bear from the bear's point of view. So I have a great chance of scoring a key hit. So, and then he would move in for the kill. So was this possible? Absolutely, it was possible. There are many recorded killings of bears, etc. But when a bear comes to you or you go into a cave, that's at a disadvantage. Once the animal has actually got a lamb, you have the advantage. See, we will see that this is exactly the same strategy David used on Goliath. A surprise attack preceded by running at the enemy and then killing him with one decisive blow. David was not scared to fight this giant, as every moment in his life had led up to this one. He had been trained by God to kill Goliath. The difference between focusing on killing a giant, like I've just got to deal with this giant in my life, all right, and being a giant killer is one is objective focus and the other one is character focused. So if you're thinking about, I need to be able to kill all giants that I ever meet, then you're developing your character. If you go, there's this one big giant in my life, and once I kill that giant, then I'll be happy. So actually what happens is you're not happy until the giant's out the way. And then when another giant comes, you're even more unhappy because you thought that was it. So when we focus on the wrong thing, then our faith and our happiness goes. Sean Venezuela, who leads Samoan Church, preached this very same sermon. I've stolen it from it and just, changed it. And it changed my life. Because at the time I was studying my master's, and I'd walk around my house going, man, if I could just finish my master's, I'll be happy. If I could just finish my master's, I'll be happy. And I was way off finishing my master's. So I went, I'm going to live an unhappy life and make everybody around me miserable until I finish my master's. Now again, students, am I talking about me or am I talking about you? And from it I went, the problem is not my master's. The problem is I hate education. So I changed my prayer from God, help me achieve my master's, to God, help me love education. And once I repented of that, I never saw a giant. There was no giant anymore. I did my master's, I went on to do my doctorate, I went on to write books. Because you see, for me, there was no longer a giant. The giant was conquered. God helped me love to study my master's today. And I did. And so I became a giant killer in the area of education for my life. And there were no longer any more giants in my life. See, the giant before David was not a challenge. It was a chance to test his abilities and faith on a bigger target. So let me ask you, who in here has ever had a pay rise in their life? Okay, so you can get another one, right? Do you understand the thing? I remember when Pete was working as a pot washer, went from, I don't know, 30 grand a year to 147,000 overnight in the first year. So if that can happen again, in the past that can happen again. Who here has ever passed an exam in their life? All right, so you can pass an exam, right? And you're all worried about whether you can pass an exam. Whoever has moved into a better house. All right, so you can do that too. Come on. Who has ever been fruitful or helped someone become a Christian? Right, so you can do that too. Who has ever had their character changed by God that surprised them? Right, so you can do that too. So what giant in your life have you not already conquered in some smaller fashion? The giant before you is a giant that you have been prepared for all of your life, and you are meant to kill that giant this week. Just look at the victories God has given you and believe that you have the same God who achieved killing the giant in your life this week. Are you with me, church? Point 3, kill your giant. Like, kill it. And learn to kill it again and again and again. 1 Samuel 17. He, being Goliath, looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and wisdom, and he despised him. Maybe your boss will despise you this week. Who cares? If you have biblical faith, I bet you he will. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give you the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world would know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear, but that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck it to the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran over and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword, drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with a sword. When the Philistines saw their hero was dead, they turned and ran. David's strategy for success: declare loudly exactly what he's going to do. This is what's going to happen. You're going to die. We're going to win. It's over. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to get 120 grand. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to get a job, 120 grand. Whatever it is, I'm going to get. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to pass my exams. You know, some of us like kingdom dreams that we keep secret until they happen. That's called cowardice. That's called cowardice. That's no faith in God. The prophets go, this is what's going to happen, then it happens. Right? And they don't stop until it does. You need to proclaim to all how you're going to fight the fight. Fight your giant and win. I remember the first time I ever said I was going to run a marathon. It was in LA at Staff. I said, I'm going to run a marathon. I never run more than 4 miles before in my life. And I said, we're going to raise it for special contributions. Going to run the marathon, 26 miles. Never done it before. Said it to the whole staff of the top leadership. And afterwards, this lady, Sonia Klopek, came up to me and said, you should have said a half marathon. I said, I wish you'd told me that before I said it. but I declared it, and then when I said it, now you have to do it. Yeah. Then I declared it, and people started giving me money, and I thought, well, I can't give it back. I had a specific plan about how we would do it. David did. He expected God to work. He acted with faith. He ran quickly at the problem without delay, not away from it. He got into a stunning blow before the giant could even maneuver, react, or even draw his sword to hurt David. And he dealt a decisive blow and killed the man with his own weapon, just like he did with the lion and the bear. Exactly the same strategy. The fight was really over before it began. Let's understand a little bit about warfare. 3 major people in warfare. You have the infantry, guys on the ground, the cavalry on the horses, and then the artillery, throwing things over the top at you. All right? Goliath would have been known as an infantry soldier, someone trained in the art of close combat. So in this case, he would have had a spear, and there's a picture there that you're with a spear. So why on earth would David want to get into hand-to-hand combat with him? He wouldn't. Why do you want to get into hand-to-hand combat with a bear or a lion? You wouldn't. David, on the other hand, at this moment, was an artillery soldier, striking from a distance, and that's how he killed the bear and the lion. David did not use a slingshot, he used a sling, very different weapons. A sling is 2 threads connected with a small pouch, and when you release the thread, the stone goes flying. This has a stopping power of a handgun. They can be accurate to 200 yards, and an expert can throw 6 stones a minute. Wow. David, you would think, most probably 5. So this means as he ran, he could have done 5 of these quite easily on the go. It was the equivalent of somebody with a bow and arrow. So if you say, somebody drew a bow, shot at a Goliath, and it killed him, you go, yeah, I get that. But it's just our view of a slingshot. But this could break a rib, could go through an eyeball, completely straight into the skull, actually hit him straight in the head. David had been practicing this as a shepherd for years and years and years. For him, this was no big deal. This was just what he did. It's us in the modern Christian world that make this a big deal. We think this is what they call a Hail Mary, like it's a last swing shot. He just magically, the angels got the stone and just, like you see, like angels when they're throwing a dart in the board, sort of get the bullseye. This was commonplace for David. This was not a big surprise to David because he had been training over and over and over again for this moment. God has been training you over and over for your moment. So the question is, would you rather go into a battle with a handgun or a spear? Pretty easy, right? In no sense of an imagination was David the underdog in this fight. Goliath never stood a chance. Not only that, with God on your side, God, make this one go straight in. So there will always be a bit of variance, even if you're at a firing range, a bit of variance. At the Olympics, there was this guy from Turkey, all right? And you had all these people, right? Everybody knows this, right? All these people that have their fancy eyeballs and like that. He's like, poop. And we're surprised. That's all David did. He went, oh, I need to chop his head off. Where's the sword? Oh, I'll use his sword. See, to David, there was no surprise. When people mention David and Goliath's story, what do they mean? They refer to the seeming impossible situation where one person wins against the odds. See, that's what Satan wants you to believe. Wow. He wants you to believe that your giant is against the odds. Never has been, never will be. As soon as you ask for a pay rise, your boss sweats. So Lennox came up to me after last week and said, one of my employees asked for a pay rise. I said, you better check whether she listened to my sermon last week or not, because maybe she did. And then she went, well, he goes to that church, I'm going to ask him. And Len's like, well, I like her and I don't want to lose her, so I better give her a pay rise. See, that's from the employer's point of view, but you're sweating it. Why are you sweating it? God never puts you in a situation that he hasn't trained you for and he thinks you can handle. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so you can endure it. God knows your life better than you. He knows your challenge better than you. The moment you were baptized, you became a conqueror. Romans 8:37. No, in all things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Since that time, all the giants in your life have been trembling, especially Satan. James 4:7 says, if you resist Satan, he will flee from you as long as you are not double-minded. The moment you pray with righteousness, your enemy has no concept of victory. James 4:16, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Now, if you haven't asked this week because you're unrighteous, I get it. We'll get righteous. See, every time you set your heart on training to conquering something or someone, mountains will move. I think about career preparation. I was speaking to somebody who was studying the Bible with yesterday, and he said, I'm studying engineering. I said, well, okay, let me just tell you, as somebody that used to recruit engineers, if you're going to get a job afterwards, then you need to have good internships with companies that, already employ you. He said, actually, I've already worked for Landlease. Oh, that's good. I said, but your Chinese and your English is not so good. Unless you actually deal with that, you won't get a good job. Other people will. He's like, right, okay, I'll do it. Wow. In other words, he's got to train to come out of university and be employable. I think salary negotiations. If you don't learn how to negotiate your salary for the rest of your life, you will never have a good salary. It's not about negotiating this salary. It's about learning how to negotiate salaries for the rest of your life. And I'll be doing some teaching on this at midweeks, etc. All right, resume building. It's not about having a good resume. It's about having a good resume for the rest of your life. So this week, I'm going to do a class on equipping Christians on how to have a good resume, so that you can actually have a good resume for the rest of your life. If you have an excellent resume for the rest of your life, you will have excellent interviews. Then I'll teach you how to get a job. But this is all about equipping yourself. This is about taking the slingshot every week and using it and training and using it and training, so you don't feel like life is full of giants. They're just full of pagan loudmouths. And that's the reality. And I know they don't like me saying that, and nor would have Goliath, but he was a pagan loudmouth taken out by a spiritual boy. And don't forget, you're fighting with God, so sometimes God just lands one on your foot. All right, he phones up and somebody gives you a job you never even applied for. I remember Chris Gazzard, he said, I got a call from a job I never even applied. And it was on a database and someone just phoned him up. And that's the bit that God can do. But we've got to focus on the bit that we can do. I would rather be someone who can overcome challenges than have no challenges. I would rather be someone who knows how to make $1 million than have $1 million. I'd rather be someone who knows how to lead than have success today. I'd rather know how to have a good marriage than my wife just being happy today. I'd rather be someone who's disciplined enough to get results than just have results today. I'd rather be someone who can kill any giant in my life at any time that I want, so I can win and live the rest of my life not in fear of another giant coming. See, the Bible is all about teaching you principles to overcome. It's not about dealing with today's issue. Today's issue is today's issue. So, how big are your dreams? Do you actually want to go back to your text and raise that salary? If I did a good job, you will. If I didn't, I need to go back and become a better preacher, okay? You've got to face your giant, you've got to fight your giant, and you've got to kill your giant. All you need is a heart that is focused on upskilling. So I've told this before, but there's a lot of young Christians here. How did I learn to run a marathon? Well, it's not because I'm African and can run like the wind, okay? I employed a guy that used to do extreme Ironman. So he would run a marathon, then he'd cycle 100 kilometers, etc. So I phoned him up and I said, how do you run a marathon? He said, it's easy, Joe. All you do is, on a first week, you run 1 mile 3 times a week. And if you can't run it, you walk it. But you must do 1 mile. So, okay. All right? Didn't run a whole mile the whole first week. Okay? But I walked a whole mile and ran a bit. And the second week, he said, run 2 miles 3 times a week. So, okay, maybe once I ran a mile, okay. And then I thought, wow, I ran a whole mile. Last week I didn't even run a mile. And the next week he said, run 3 miles 3 times a week. And the 4th week he said, run 4 miles 4 times a week. And 5th week he went run 5 miles 5 times a week. That week I actually ran 5 miles one of those times. Well, now I thought I could easily run 1 miles 3 times a week easy. Right? So now I was starting to get fit. And then I took it away. He said, just take it up to 11 miles. Now, a marathon is 26 miles. He said, you only need to run 26 miles once. So you don't need to train to get to 26 miles. And so you learn that, and of those weeks, sometimes you do 11, sometimes you collapse at 9, etc. But really, your body is now fit enough to do anything. And then the issue becomes not getting an injury. Most people are registered for a marathon. A lot don't make it because they arrive with an injury. And then all you have to do, he said, and on the day, you just have to grit it. All right? That's all it is. You don't need to be any more fitter. So on the day I arrive, and after about 3-4 miles, my knee goes, and I have to walk the whole thing after that. But I finished. 5 hours, 50 minutes later. They're about to close the tape. But I finished, okay? And then I thought, okay, now I really want to learn. So I went back about 6 months, a year later, and I thought, I want to be able to run a half marathon completely. And that's what I trained to do. And then I learned. Then I taught people in the church how to do it. I remember doing this with Pete up in LA, and he ran the Hollywood Marathon. He went, never again, Joe. No, I did it for Jesus, but never again. I went round for the Mayor's Night last night. Pete's now running a running club in Parramatta. So you see, the Hollywood Marathon was preparing Pete to evangelize in Parramatta. Now, Paulina doesn't run them, she said, but she claps and stuff. Okay, all right. But what is it all about? It's about character growth so that you have courage to face anything in your life. Anything. All you need is to set your heart on what you really want. Get advice and be obedient. All right? And then enjoy the ride. God was never going to allow David to die. Even if he hit him with the second shot, the third shot. You know, even if he messed up and didn't hit him with any, maybe Goliath would have pulled out his sword and fallen on it. I mean, God will always come through for you. Do you know what I mean? But David was ready for the challenge. So this week, regardless, go up to your boss, or if you're a student, go up to your tutor. That's the equivalent. Go talk about your studies. Sit them down like Alison and go, where am I going wrong? Or if I'm not, give me some money. And you know what Alison was blessed with? Her humility was blessed with success. And I know she's been working really, really hard too, don't get me wrong. But that's what God wants for all of us. So are you going to be like David and dream big? Have a great Father's Day. Amen.
To hear more from Dr. Joe Willis, check out his 2 books on Amazon, The Art of Spiritual Warfare, Practicals for Becoming a Prayer Warrior, and Money is the Answer for Everything. Click the links in the description below. Also, for more life-changing lessons, subscribe to his YouTube channel, Dr. Joe Willis.